There is like there's this video going around of this dude, and he's trying on a pair of shoes, and he's literally running back and forth in the store, and like a grown man, like, and then kind of bouncing them and jumping up and down, and it's just like ridiculous.
Seth, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
You have like, your whole life has been shoes.
Most of it, yeah.
So you went from like working retail selling shoes to designing shoes, and now you like sell shoes of your own and socks and things like that. Yeah. And you also taught me a new term, industrial design. I had no idea what that was before meeting you.
It's awesome. It's such a dope term.
Yeah. So interesting. I want to hear your whole story. I want to know like how you came into this line of work.
Okay.
I want to hear about like the schooling that it took to become an industrial designer, and like what that means and what that looks like. And I want to know what it is that you do now. I'll shut up. Go ahead.
So I actually was homeschooled growing up, which is kind of wild.
Okay.
I know, yeah. And then I went to college at Drexel for industrial design, product design, which essentially is just designing anything from like chairs to tables, to really anything. And I did that for 4 years, and then I left and moved to New York City to do design at a couple different places. One was Martha Stewart doing kitchenware, and then it was wild. It was crazy. Then one was at BarkBox doing dog toys. And it was one of those experiences where it's like I didn't care what I was designing, but I really love dogs, so I was like, you know what? I don't care if I'm like designing dog balls or whatever, it doesn't matter, but it was sick. That was great. And then throughout that entire process, I was buying shoes because I've always liked sneakers. Like growing up in high school, I worked at the Vans store for years. That was like my retail experience. And then Vans are great. I love them. They don't get enough credit. It's crazy, especially not in sneakers. They're the best.
I wear like the basic white girl white Vans all the time. It's fine.
They're awesome. Yeah, no, they're inexpensive. They're comfortable. They're good looking. Like, it's hard not to get anything better than that. Where were we at?
You did the Martha Stewart.
Martha Stewart. Yep. Did kitchenware for a while, and then I was just buying sneakers. Especially living in New York, it was so easy because all the big sneaker releases would be in New York. It was crazy. There was like Fashion Week. There was whenever like a rapper wanted to release something like Kanye or Travis Scott or whoever, they would always release in New York. And so I was always able to leave at lunch and like sneak over to the sneaker stores and grab just the newest releases. It was awesome. And then what I started doing was I was just spending so much on sneakers, spending my entire salary on sneakers. So I was like, I need to find some way to do something besides just not wear them because I wasn't able to wear all of them.
There's a collection. They're meant to be looked at.
Yeah, in a way.
I get it. I support it.
Oh, I appreciate it. But I just started filming videos of them because I had wanted to do YouTube for years, and I had tried different channels. Like my first video was back in like 2007, reviewing like an Xbox or something. And I just started doing videos, and I was just going at it from a design point of view because I had a designer background. So I was like, what can I talk about these sneakers that hasn't already been said? Because everyone else was talking about like, oh, well, Michael wore this shoe, during the 86 whatever, or this shoe's red or black or whatever. So I was able to say like, okay, well, the manufacturing process behind this shoe is this, or these materials are this. And because I was able to do that, plus get all of the sneakers that no one could get because I was in the epicenter of it, it was great. It was sort of a perfect combination. And then I think the big break for me was when I like won this competition to meet Virgil Abloh, who's this big designer, or was a big designer, like fashion designer, and he created Off-White. I don't know if you're familiar with the brand. But he created Off-White, and then I won a competition to go meet with him. I wrote an essay about design, and I got to sit down with him for 10 minutes and film. I couldn't film it, but record the whole process. It was so sick. It was awesome.
That is amazing.
It was really, and then he recently passed away too, so it's even more special now because it's literally an experience that I can just never have again.
Yeah.
But he was just so influential, and so he released a pair of shoes with Nike, and I was able to get them early, and he signed them. And that video just like popped off, and it got like 1 million views. And for me at the time, I think it was like 40,000 subscribers or 50,000 subscribers, like back in 2017. And that just started like blowing up the channel. Yeah, because everyone was like, wow, he can get early sneakers like that. Maybe I should watch him instead. And it worked out.
That's so cool. Yeah. And then where in this process did you go to school for industrial design?
It was right before this. So I worked at the Vans store for a couple years. I worked at Urban Outfitters for a couple years, just in retail. And I was going to school at Drexel in Philly. And then after that, I moved to New York because I thought that's where all the design opportunities were.
I know you already had to explain this to me because I had no idea what industrial design is. Mm-hmm. For those I'm sure so many people don't actually know what that means. What is that? Is like that's the program of study that you chose?
Totally.
So you have a degree in industrial design. Yes. What is industrial design?
So it's kind of like graphic design, except it's more 3D. It's like it's designing things in like a 3D space versus graphic design. So it can be anything. Like it can be a toothbrush, a dog toy, a shoe, you know.
And so you've designed like all of these things, like dog toys, shoes, socks, things like that. What's your favorite thing that you've ever been able to design?
I guess I should say a shoe because I'm into sneakers. But, but like, there's so many things. I started a sock company, so I really like socks.
Yeah.
But I also like, I used to do like coffee presses a little bit at Martha Stewart and then a little bit at another kitchenware firm. I used to do like some like futuristic sort of electronic stuff for another design firm. So that sort of stuff was really exciting because it was something that I hadn't really had much experience with.
Yeah.
Like I was drinking coffee at the time, but I'd go to like the Wawa and grab a coffee. I wouldn't like actually sit there and press. And so learning that whole process from beginning to end of like actually using a coffee press, learning how to use it, and then going into designing one was cool. Like it was just a whole brand new learning experience.
What is your favorite thing you've ever designed? If you had to pick one.
Oof.
The most prized possession, what you're most proud of.
Possession?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it has to be a sock because of the sock company, but like, I don't know. It's the only thing I can think of. But there's so many things that are just like random. Like I did a bunch of dog toys that I really liked. Like my dog really loved chewing on the dog toys that I made him. So that was kind of, it was the best. It was awesome.
Like you've made a lot of things, and it's so funny because we totally went into this episode, and I was like, we should totally talk about retail, but I don't even want to talk about retail anymore. I just want to talk about industrial design because it's so fascinating.
Yeah, it can be anything. It's crazy.
When you've designed so many different kinds of things, what are some misconceptions that people might have about like their everyday items and like the way they're made or materials that they should look out for in specific items? Does that make sense? I don't know if that question made sense. Okay.
No, totally. I think it's interesting. There's so many different things, and it sort of depends on the category line. I know in kitchenware, like we had to use very specific materials that were like food safe or could handle certain temperatures. I think one of the things that I run into a lot with people, especially when it comes to like fashion, is materials.
Okay.
And like a lot of it depends on, like for example, you buy a pair of sneakers for $200, and sometimes the sneakers suck because the materials are bad. But at the end of the day, it's because the materials that you actually want to put in the sneakers are so expensive. It would be like $1,000 pair of Balenciagas. And in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, that's why these designer brands are so much more expensive. It's not just because of the name recognition, it's because they're using nicer materials that just look the same as other materials. But when it comes to like other stuff, like food safe stuff, I just have become like a lot more conscientious about the things that I buy. When it comes to recyclability, when it comes to food safety, when it comes to any of that sort of stuff, just sort of knowing like some of the different warnings and different things, and knowing some of like the different temperatures that plastics can get up to, just so it's like, oh God, I don't want to put this in the microwave because it could, infect whatever food I'm eating. Yeah.
Are there a lot of like food safe or like food items that probably like shouldn't be?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Everywhere that I worked was pretty careful about it, and I think that generally, at least in the United States, they're pretty careful about it.
Okay.
But there's always like, you always learn about new materials or learn about new properties of materials that either make things better or worse. And then it's just always random when that sort of stuff comes out. So I would say generally in the US, things seem pretty good.
What are some materials for like I'm obsessed with coffee mugs.
Oh, nice.
And I love the giant coffee mugs. I literally use like the soup mugs for tea sometimes because you don't want the lower caffeine.
Right, exactly.
What are some like when buying any kind of food safe things, like maybe even a coffee mug, what is a material that you're like, hey, if it says that it has this, don't buy it. Be safe.
I would generally try and shy away from like the plasticky stuff because especially if you're reheating it, like not everything is microwave safe. So that's what I usually use ceramic. But I also like using like the double walled like mugs, those metal mugs. Those are great. Those are awesome. And they really do a good job of like keeping your beverages like cool or hot. It's sick, yeah. It sounds like ridiculous, but like genuinely so much work goes into those, especially with like the widths between. So with the double walled, so with all the mugs, like I'm trying to think of a brand. What's that brand that just popped off? Yeti. Yep. They're great. And the resale prices on Yetis recently was crazy. It was nuts. It's insane. But like there's so much thought that goes into it because it's not just, you've got the metal on the outside, you've got the metal on the inside, but in between there's like this vacuum sealed, just like they suck out all the air and it prevents the heat from kind of crossing out or in. And so it's like the distance between the two metals can cause like differences in temperature and can keep drinks cooler longer or vice versa. So it's a whole different world.
Yeah, there's a lot of thought that goes into that stuff. Totally. That's something that I heard about Yeti is that like Yeti is a little bit more expensive, but because the design is just so thoughtful and so good, like it's such good quality, and you can use it forever.
Right, exactly.
Like they last your whole life, kind of thing. Like you'll never have to get another cooler. I mean, maybe in like 50 years, but you know. So this is gonna sound like a really dumb question. As a former teacher, I know that sometimes common sense isn't super common.
Totally.
When something says like not microwave safe or not dishwasher safe, what does that mean, and why is it so bad to use them in those settings?
It really depends on, I think, the specific item. Some it's like some plastics just can't withstand the heat and they'll melt, or in some cases like there's certain things in the plastic, like different materials that kind of leak in certain ways that you just don't want. So I would just say be pretty conscientious about like putting things in I think the dishwasher is more like if there's like printed on textures or designs on the outside, it'll come off. Okay. But like with a microwave is the one that I'm more worried about. Like I just would be careful to like make sure that I'm looking at microwave safe stuff.
Okay. So your favorite thing to design is socks.
Yes.
How important is like the thought of the design of a sock?
Well, let me give you some socks. Actually, I brought you some socks. And a hat.
Love socks. Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, these are so colorful. Oh, I love this so much.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about like designing these socks.
Okay, so
what goes into that?
It was really sort of a long process because socks, at first I thought socks are socks, like they're all the same. But then as you start to work on them, you're like, okay, cool, there's different materials, there's different blends. Right? We worked on that for so long. So it's different materials, different blends. It's, for example, I'm sorry, I'm going to open them for you.
Show me. And like, take me through the stages of like, what does it look like to design? Oh, these are my favorite.
Oh, awesome.
Oh my God, these are my favorite. I'm opening them right now. So those that like are just listening, they're literally pink with like speckle colors.
They're awesome. There's a green one with speckles in there.
Oh yeah. Okay, give me the whole process of what is like designing a sock look. Oh my God, this is teal.
Yeah.
Okay, these are my favorite. Tell me the whole process of like, what does it look like to design a sock, and what are some of the most, in your opinion, important aspects of it?
I would think it'd be the materials first off, because it's a different blend of like, so cotton and polyester. So polyester gives it that sort of stretch, and cotton is, the material that everyone really likes. It's like the softness.
Can you elaborate more on like what these? It sounds like a common sense question, but I'm learning like in my adult life. People just like really don't understand the difference between the kinds of fabrics. So like elaborate a little bit on that.
So cotton is natural, polyester is synthetic, but polyester allows for like that stretch. I don't know if it has a actual blend on there. It doesn't on the packaging, but I should know it, but I don't know it offhand. But like, so you could, depending on the blend, it allows for like different functions of the sock. So it can be more stretchy, softer.
I love this hat. Thank you for the hat.
Instagram to make sure I was giving you socks that like would match sort of with what your fits are, just to make sure.
Literally the sweetest. I interrupted you. I'm so sorry. Please continue.
Yeah, so it's really like our biggest thing was to make socks that not only looked great with all the sneakers in your collection, but also are very comfortable, very breathable. So we came up with this thing called IsoWeave, which are these little triangles, and they're just like a stretchier, more breathable section on the sock, and so it sort of wraps around your foot in a nicer way. So we just sort of took the sock and just tried to update it to make it how we would want socks to be, because we always wore like Nike socks that were just like cheap and so we just used our design backgrounds. We're like, you know what, we could probably make a better sock, and it was 2020, it was like the peak of COVID, and we're like, we have time, let's do it. And sort of that's why we did it.
What are the stages of like going into creating something like this?
So for something like this, it's different than like I would say it's different than doing like a standard product where you start with like sketches. With these, because socks are generally all the same shape, what we did is we found a factory that we really liked. We looked for a lot of different factories, and we just asked for samples based on, like, say, for example, we wanted, like I said, I don't remember exactly the blend because it changes based on what iteration we're on. But we asked for a specific blend, we got a sample in, and then we're like, okay, well, we like the way it feels, but we don't like, the different areas of support on the sock. So we'd like sketch something over the socks. Like we take a picture of the sock sample, sketch something over it, and be like, can you change that to add the IsoWeave in this case, or can you make the ribbing a little bit lower or higher or whatever? And we just worked on a bunch of different iterations until they finally got to where we liked them. And from there, like, what was great was that I feel like we kind of had a little bit of a cheat code, because with my audience who's big into sneakers, it was so easy to kind of just promote it on the channel. And so we did a drop, our initial drop, we promoted on my channel, and we did like an early access the day before through emails, and it completely sold out. And then we just kept doing it. We're like, this is a viable business. We can make this work. So we just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And now we have employees, and now we're in retailers like Zoomies. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, thanks.
So, and I have so many other questions also, not just about socks. I just know that my ADHD will go on a tangent if I don't keep myself on a topic at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So, for you, it's really important to stick with like cotton polyester in the socks.
Generally, yeah.
Why?
Because that's the most comfortable. We've done wool. We've done a bunch of different other blends, and it just doesn't seem to feel as nice. Like wool, the problem that we'll have is that it'll really pill, like the more that you wear it. And even though it's not, basically what happens is people get them in and they're like, my socks are pilling like crazy, and they'll return them. And we'll be like, okay, well, it's the nature of wool. That's what happens. Like the more that you wear it, the less it'll pill. But it didn't really make sense for us to continue making wool socks because people weren't interested in them, which is weird to me because wool socks are like the best.
Yeah, I love comfy wool socks.
So great. We still make them, but we don't make them as much.
Right.
But this is just like a perfect blend of like sort of an athletic sock, but also the kind of sock that you can wear like on warm, cozy nights, things like that. So
does like ribbing actually like do anything?
yeah.
Okay, what does that do?
It's where so there's elastic up on the top, but it also does a good job of like holding your foot.
Okay.
Yeah. That's mainly what it's for.
So ribbing has a purpose.
Yeah.
It's not just, okay, I never knew that. Yeah. Is there anything else that like people might not understand about like the design of like socks or the materials or anything that like really makes a difference that they might not know?
I think it's like, so there are a bunch of different ways to put designs on socks.
Okay.
So there's sublimation, which is basically just printing on socks, but what that requires is like a much worse material.
Polyester.
Exactly. And you can get like you can get really, really detailed designs on the socks, but like when you stretch them, you'll see like white in between, like really bad in between all of the different, like, so the same way that you can see the white here, it's like whenever you pull it, like it stretches the design and then it's just like these white lines. It just looks awful. And they're not very comfortable. They're not very breathable. So what we do is we do jacquard, which essentially is knitting the socks with the design in them. So this design is actually knit into the sock, and that way it lasts longer, it looks better, and it feels nicer.
God, so my mom has a print shop.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And I saw these things on TikTok. It was like the Taylor Swift spooky Halloween sweatshirts. You saw them? You know what I'm talking about? But like the colors were all like light pink, white, and like light blue. And I was like, that's not very fall. I didn't realize at the time it was like that for a reason.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Like, Mom, if I do this design, can you just print it on like a more comfy thing? And she's like, yeah, but it has to be polyester.
Right.
Or it won't show up.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, so finding a comfortable sweatshirt that was mostly polyester, like at least 70%, was so hard.
Yep.
And I found some,
Yeah.
and I loved them. I got the colors, and we printed them all on. And then we washed them the first time, and my mom immediately goes, oh, they definitely lied about what this is made of. Because it like all faded. I literally have it here.
Oh my god.
I can grab it real quick.
Oh wow.
It faded so
my
bad.
gosh.
It was black.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
After like one wash?
One wash.
That's crazy.
My mom goes, oh, they definitely lied about what it was made of.
Wow.
Because there's no way.
Right.
Because that's the whole issue of why it has to be so much polyester, because it will fade in the wash. And my mom said no rayon, whatever it's called.
Okay.
So yeah, I know sublimation.
That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah.
So we're gonna look into different ways to, because she was like, I'm not weeding all of those designs out.
Right.
That looks terrible. So we're gonna have to look into other options. But okay, so any other remaining things that you feel like people should know about designing socks, or the kinds of socks that they should buy before I move on to something else?
Not really. I think we mainly focus on crew, but we make like lows. We're getting into basketball socks, running socks, things like that. So no, I think just try our socks.
What makes a sock a running sock?
So that's a pretty contentious area. Like, so it's funny because like basically in a lot of ways running socks, and this is the thing, certain people will be like, that's insane, that's so dumb, why would you ever say that? But certain socks, like it's just the cut. Like some people just like running in short socks versus long socks. Now there are different ways that you can structure support. So like we can add more pad. Like for our running socks, we're gonna have more padding in the heel, things like that. Like there's gonna be basically these little lips on the edge of this area here, so that your shoe doesn't rub against your foot when you're running. But like in a lot of ways, a lot of the running socks I think are mostly marketing.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that as a sock company owner, but realistically, we are genuinely trying to make our running socks the best out there. And I'm sure that every running company says that, but like realistically, like
You're trying to make them not just regular socks with the term running on them.
exactly 100%.
I appreciate that. No, that's valid. I appreciate that.
But to be fair, there are good running like sock companies out there. I'm not
There are also some that just say it's running socks and it's the exact same.
Exactly. Like it's like on Amazon how they have like all the different like words after products, like running thing, or like for coffee mugs, it's like coffee mug, ceramic, whatever, you know.
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. So now you also design shoes.
Yes.
You have designed shoes.
Yes. Uh-huh.
What goes in, like, I'm sure that's a big process because shoes in general look so different all the time. And I want to know, like, what does that process even look like? I have so many other questions, but I want to know what that looks like.
Yeah, so it can be anything. So like I've done traditional shoes in the past. Like I worked with VaynerMedia and Planters Peanuts to design like a leather shoe. And that one was pretty simple because they handled most of it. So I would just sketch the shoe, like on the side of the shoe or the side of the shoe, and they just built it. But I've made like a shoe from scratch in Portugal before, and basically it was working with a factory. I would sort of sketch out my idea. So like basically I'd draw out the shape of a foot and then draw different like panels and things like that, like different leather panels, different materials, and then point out like so for example, if say if this was a regular shoe, if this area was leather, I'd like draw this line on the side of the shoe, and then I'd like put an arrow and say like make this part leather, make this part whatever. And then what they would do is they'd have a pattern maker draw that on like a 3D foot and then cut it out and make a pattern and make a sample. So for traditional shoes, it's relatively standard, but it is a pretty intense process because you have to sew it all together, which I've never done. I just
You just do the design.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The biggest part though, and the biggest cost is the outsole, like the rubber part in the bottom of the shoe, because you actually have to create a mold, and that's like a $20,000 thing, and you have to do that for every single size. So it can be really expensive. So that's why a lot of people, when they make their own shoes, they'll only design the top part of the shoe and then buy a pre-made mold from like or a pre-made base from like China or something like that, because it's significantly cheaper.
Wow.
Yeah, but for something like this, so this is a fully 3D printed shoe, and this is actually
the Nike shoe.
The Nike shoe, yes. So this
Does it have a specific name? Sorry.
It's called the Nike Air Max 1000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's based on the original Nike Air Max 1.
Okay.
But it just released at Complex Con this last weekend, and it's done in collaboration with a company called Zellerfeld, who 3D prints shoes from scratch.
Cool.
So sick. And we're actually doing, my sock brand Apothecary is doing a shoe with Zellerfeld, so I figured I should wear the shoe for like a month, see how it feels, see where the pain points are.
Yeah.
And then try and learn from that and make a better version. Not that we were going to make something better than Nike, but like make something based on, you know what I mean?
No, that makes sense.
So that's what I'm doing. So it's a bright red shoe. It doesn't fit with every outfit, but I'm going to wear it for a month and see what happens. And make a video out of it, so at least I got some content too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of how to phrase this question, because I have another one that's also similar.
Okay.
So you said that it can be really expensive to create the under part of the shoe, that so many companies just go and order one from a third party, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think that's like a good thing or a bad thing?
I think if you're trying to break into the footwear industry, it might just be a necessary thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there like and again, like the answer might just be no. Like I don't know anything about this stuff. Is there like a better quality option? Like is there a quality concern when just getting it from a third party, or is it like a...
Not really. I'd say in a lot of cases, it might even be better to go with a third party.
Okay.
So like, have you heard of Vibram? They make
That sounds familiar.
rubber stuff mainly. So they've been doing it for like a century around, or I could be wrong, but they've been doing it a long time. And so buying from them, you know that you're going to get a midsole and an outsole that's like super high quality. It's going to last forever. And I think they do actually replace the outsole on some shoes. Like, I think.
What is the outsole?
It's just the rubber part in the bottom. So usually it's rubber on the bottom, and then you've got like a foam, like an EVA foam or something in the midsole, and then the rest of the shoe is whatever material it is, whether it's knit or like leather. Yeah.
That makes sense. When it comes to like a person buying a pair of shoes, whatever kind of pair, what are some things that you think are the most important for them to look at in terms of like quality, appearance, long lasting? Like what are some things that they should be aware of when going to look at a pair of shoes?
I think, first of all, I'd say size. Make sure that you're buying the right size. Like, that's something that I did so wrong, and I hate to admit it because I worked at the Vans store for years measuring people's feet, and I thought I was a size 10 for, like, the longest time. I'm a size 9. It's crazy. It doesn't matter. My dad had huge feet. I was like, there's no way I'm going to have, like, normal size feet my whole life, and then I just did. It's crazy. On the internet, like, people love to say, like, sneaker YouTubers are like, yo, you got size 9 feet? That's the smallest size. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not even, doesn't matter. Regardless, whole big thing.
Trolls will always find something to get at you for. Yeah.
It's sample size. It's what all the brands make their shoes, and it works out great for me. Yeah, sizing is important because if you don't get a good size, it's just not going to feel good on your feet.
Right.
So that's the most important. I'd say measure your feet. And then the problem is, too, is like different shoes and different brands, the sizes are different. So like Adidas, all their shoes like seem, not all their shoes, but a lot of their shoes seem to fit like a little bit small. So I always go up a half size in Adidas. With Nike, they're always on point. With 3D printed shoes like this, you never really know. I would say try on all the shoes that you can. When you're buying a pair of shoes, you can buy it online, but try it on and then return it if it doesn't fit. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people are just like, I have it, why would I not return it? Or why would I return it? But just do it so you get something that's comfortable and fits, yeah.
I just had a question. It literally just floated out of my... Is there like an easy way for someone to be able to measure their foot like at home?
I'm sure there is. I'm sure you could download and print like one of those foot measurers. I'm sure there's a way to do it with just like a measuring tape. I just don't know how to do it.
That's okay. I think I'm somewhere between a 5.5 to a 6 to a 6.5, depending on the shoe, and so I never actually know what size to get either.
That's my wife's problem. She literally has the exact same foot size, but she has like 7 different pairs of sneakers because I buy her sneakers and I can't remember what her size is, and so she has everything between a 5 and a 7.
Literally, and I feel like this is so true in like girls' clothes, women's clothes in general. Like the sizing at different places are so
totally
off,
yeah.
Especially in like pants, but shoes too. It's
right.
wild.
It's
super wild.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Are there? And it's so funny because like on your brain, I know you're mostly thinking sneakers, and I'm thinking heels and sandals.
That's fine. I can talk heels too. Yeah.
But like, are there any specific materials of shoes that you're like, I wouldn't invest in a pair made of this? They're not gonna last.
Not specifically. I think in a lot of cases, it's better to spend a little bit more and get a slightly higher quality sneaker because they should last a little bit longer. I've really been into, it sounds weird to say from someone who loves Jordans, but like Birkenstocks.
Okay.
Because you can wear them forever and just like replace the outsole when you're done. And they're super comfy. They don't always match with everything, but they're great. Yeah. And I've been leaning more into like the sustainability side of things, so I think that's really cool. Like a lot of times stuff that says genuine leather, it's not actually genuine leather. It's like the cheapest leather. It's like the worst kind. I know. So it's like...
How do you tell the difference?
You have to cut it, which is there's this channel I really love on YouTube called Rose Anvil, and he does like leather goods, and he started recently like cutting open sneakers and just like saying like, okay, this Jordan is really good, or this Timberland boot is really good, and so you can sort of go to his channel and see what actually has nicer leather than others, but like in a lot of cases, that's one of the only ways to really know for sure.
So like, I don't even know how to ask this because I don't know what I'm asking necessarily, if that makes sense. Yeah. But I know sometimes, like I love Target, and I think that this has gotten a lot better, but back in the day when I was younger, I just knew that if I bought shoes from Target, my feet would just hurt. Yeah. They would hurt so bad. Right. So like, what is it about some of these shoes that just make your feet hurt so bad that maybe if like I knew I could just stay away from XYZ?
I think a lot of times it's like the foam used in the midsole. It's like really stiff, or it's the shoe doesn't fit right, or in some cases like I have really high arches. So if I buy a shoe that doesn't have super high arches, it's just I'm done. So like what I'll do sometimes is throw in insoles that fit my foot a little bit better. But like usually the cheaper shoes, like I totally get that a lot of times it's a necessity for people, but like they're not going to last as long and they're not going to be as comfortable. Just in general, yeah. Yeah.
What are some misconceptions that people might have about whether it's socks, shoes, industrial design in general, selling shoes and socks? Like, what are some misconceptions that people might have about any of the things that you do or that you're affiliated with?
I don't know. I'm sure there are. I just
might not know. Or just something that like goes into your job that people just aren't really aware of.
I would say in general, when it comes to, like a totally general statement, when it comes to starting a creative or a product business, it's a lot to do, but it's not impossible. Yeah. Like it's something that I think more people. It's the same thing I say to people who want to start YouTube or social media. It's like just do it, and then yes, it's a pain in the butt, and yes, it's gonna be super hard to do. But like once you do it, you're like, I'm so glad I did this, and it's not impossible. Like anyone can do it.
What was the process from going from working for other people and selling their products to going and selling your own and starting your own business?
That's a good question. So actually it's funny. It was something that I didn't initially want to do. Okay. But then what happened was when I was living in New York, it was 2018 at the time, I was working at BarkBox and I got fired. Well, I was let go. It was a big layoff. I like to say layoffs.
Yeah. It's okay. It's fine. Yeah, you got to clarify.
Exactly. So I got laid off and I was doing YouTube at the time. And at that point, I think I was at like I think I just got my 100,000 subscriber plaque and I was stoked. I was like, this is great. And at the time I was making the same on YouTube that I was making at Bark. So when I got let go, it was more of like an ego hit than anything else, which I'm so blessed and lucky that happened that way because I don't know, I didn't have to, it allowed me to really go out and explore and try my own thing. So I moved back to Philly, and I just started doing YouTube full time. And as I continued doing YouTube, I was like, I've got this industrial design background. One of my best friends is in industrial design too. We both love sneakers. Why are we not creating something? And so we tried to figure out what it was, and it ended up being socks. And it's been great. Like, I really love being my own boss. Now, I will say that it's a little bit harder for me. I'm not like good at being someone else's boss. I'm learning how to do that like right now as we get employees, and it's a whole different world because I'm like I'm very non-confrontational. Like, I'm not great at telling someone like, hey, I don't like that. Although I've gotten better at it. But like, for example, like, I don't know, nothing's like, my employees are great, but like if there was a situation where I had to like reprimand someone or fire someone, like that would suck, and I would do it, but it would suck, and it's not something I'm looking forward to. Not that I think it's going to happen, but that's been the biggest learning for me, is like having to be someone else's boss rather than my own. Because when I was just working for myself, when I was just doing social media, it was amazing, and it still is. Like, I still do it as my own, as my main thing. But like, yeah,
being in charge of people is hard. It's really scary.
Gosh, yeah.
And like, you don't. Especially when you really care about the people, and it's like, oh, I hate this idea that you have, but I don't want you to feel bad about it. I don't know what to do, but this is my job. Yeah, I get it. What's like the biggest thing that you learned from starting your own small business?
There's so much. There's so much. I guess the biggest thing would have to be, it really is, you have to learn all the different aspects of business. Like before, like with YouTube, it was like, okay, I know how to negotiate to get a sponsorship. I know how to make content, edit content, whatever. But with like a business like this, I have to learn taxes, which I sort of knew with YouTube, but it's so different being a completely different kind of like entity than my YouTube business.
You have to be like LLC or an S Corp, and yeah.
And it's like, and especially now with employees, like figuring out health insurance, and just like learning what, like manufacturing. So whenever I worked at other design firms, they would manufacture stuff for me, but now like we're manufacturing it. So like my business partner does most of it, but I still have to have some understanding of what's going on. And that's been like a whole different world for me. So I think just learning all the things that I don't know that I don't know. And there's so much of it. There's still stuff like even 4 years later, I'm still like, I had no idea.
You don't have to have the answers immediately. A lot of like, we all are learning as we're going and figuring it all out.
Totally.
I love that. So what is my next question? I told you I don't do Adderall on the days that I do record, or I don't do as much as I should. I take like half, and that's probably bad because it makes. I don't want my personality to not be there on the episodes, but I also want to be a little put together. Right. And it's, it is what it is. It's fine. Everything's fine. Can you think of any other like misconceptions or things that you think are important for people to know, whether it's about buying shoes, socks, running a business, design? And I am going to have more questions about the industrial design, like schooling and what that degree looked like. Yeah. But if you have anything else that you want to put in now, that's also fine.
Not offhand. I'm sure something will pop up.
If it does, just let me know. Yeah, that's totally fine. Can you think of any instances? Because when you run a small business, you deal with the general public pretty often. Or are there any instances that you can think of, whether in industrial design for other companies or even your own, where you thought, "Oh my God, I don't get paid enough for this"?
Shoot, probably. I think there's a lot of like. So I really love traveling, and it's the best. But like there are times where I just want to not. You know what I mean? And like I'll go to somewhere, and it's like I'll go to an event or a conference or like a meeting with a client or something, and like it'll just not be worth the trip. And it's like I'm not going somewhere cool like Thailand. I'm going somewhere like Wisconsin, or nothing wrong with Wisconsin. Nothing wrong with Wisconsin. Love Wisconsin. But like it'll just be like I'll spend like a whole 4 days away, and just nothing really came out of it. And I'm like, I could have been working on videos. I could have been doing something that I felt like was a little bit more productive. And that's been the one thing. Like now, especially with YouTube and with this business, like my time has become so much more. I've become so much more cognizant of it, to where it's like I know that okay, if I want to get all this stuff done, I've got to block out this much time. And going on a trip that's like 4 days, which I don't know if it's going to be worth it or not. It's like I lose all that time.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, I don't know if they necessarily own their own store, but I had a couple people who like sell shoes and things send me a couple stories. And I hope that you've never experienced anything like this. Some of them have just been so like ridiculous. Someone sent me a story about how they worked in a shoe store selling shoes. A big variety. Like it was probably like a rack room or something like that. And it was prom season.
Oh, wow.
So they had a teenage girl and her mother come in that, we have to return a pair of shoes. And they put in the box, and put the box on the counter, slid it towards whatever,
Right.
and they go to start opening it, and the girl just looks a little nervous. And he opens the box, because they check to make sure it's not an empty box with rocks in it or anything like that.
Right.
These shoes are destroyed.
Really?
They are worn, let me tell you.
Right.
They are scuffed. The material's a little ripped.
Right.
Clearly some liquid, like it looks like red punch spilled. These are like light color shoes on the satin material. And they just looked at it, they go, these have been worn.
Right.
And she's like, well, I only wore them once. I just wore them for prom. And he's like, you can't return those. Like, we can't resell them. And she's like, well, I don't want to keep them. It doesn't matter.
Right.
We can't resell these. You wore them. You messed them up.
Right.
You destroyed them. And the mom jumps in. Well, how do you know she didn't buy them like this? You see kids running around this store. Right. You don't know if kids messed up these shoes and then we bought them like that. And he's like, why would you buy stained and ripped shoes?
That's wild.
What do you mean?
That's
who in what world am I going to believe that? Because also, we have cameras. If you let me know what day you bought them, I can go back and look, and we can prove whether you bought them like this.
Right.
But I can't take it and ranting and raving. Are you calling me a liar? Are you? Yeah, ma'am. Yeah. I am. What?
It's wild.
And hopefully you've never experienced customers like that.
Nothing like that.
Customers are wonderful.
Yeah,
they've never done anything wrong in their whole lives. But someone else sent me one that was even very similar, very similar story, and I feel like both of these happen more often than they should. Right. But someone was returning shoes. Okay. And I think this was more of like a niche place, maybe like a Nike or a Vans or something like that, where they had like a very niche kind of shoe. And when they scanned the receipt, it said something like white Vans or something like that, right? Because, it gives a brief description when they return it, when you scan it. Right. Open the box to make sure there were shoes in there. And there were like white shoes, but they weren't Vans. It was like a completely different kind of shoe. Right. And the guy was like, what do you do? What is this? And they're like, I'm returning the shoes that I got. And they're like, these aren't the shoes that you got. And at first the guy was like, they're confused. They must have got a bunch of different shoes and they're just not a shoe enthusiast. They don't know. They just put it in the wrong box. And he's like, yeah, you definitely put the wrong shoes in here. Totally fine. Right. Why don't you go back and get the right ones and you can return them? No, that's what I bought. I want to return those. Right. How do you know? You don't know every shoe in this store. He goes, actually, I do. And I know these are not our brand. Right. And it was like, okay, you're just trying to return a cheaper pair of shoe. Right. Right. This is weird. No, you can't. I'm sorry. You're not going to be able to return here. You got to leave. You got to skedaddle. People try to get away with the weirdest things sometimes.
They really do, yeah.
Sold shoes. Of course, your customers now, they're perfect. Yeah. When you were selling not your shoes, other people's shoes, can you think of any instances of like a customer mistreating you or acting a little crazy or entitled or anything like that? Because you do have that retail background. Totally. You understand the general public. It's if you blocked it all out, that's also very natural and valid.
Like, there have definitely been, especially working in the Vans store in the mall, like there was, especially around like coming back school season. Oh, yeah. Like that was crazy. But there's nothing like specifically. I did have, like I've seen those memes, especially now on like TikTok and Instagram, Twitter, where it's like the dad running around the shoe to like test them. I've seen that in real life. Like doing the thing where he like runs back and forth and like skids and stops. I've seen that in real life. Like that actually happens.
Wait.
But it's...
I need you to explain. I have no idea what you're talking about. Why?
There is like there's this video going around of this dude, like this dad, and he's trying on a pair of shoes, and I think the caption's like, he's really testing the shoes, or he really, yeah. And he's literally running back and forth in the store, and like a grown man, like, and then kind of bouncing them and jumping up and down, and it's just like ridiculous because I guess he just wants to make sure he's buying the right shoes. Which I've seen, like, that's a thing that people do.
I feel like that can be a hazard.
Totally.
Like, sir, this is a Wendy's. Like, this is not, you're not a runner or a track star.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's real. How is that common?
I wouldn't say it's common, but I've seen it probably 2 or 3 times. I worked at that store probably 4 years, and I think maybe 3, but I saw it enough times.
Did you ever work like a Black Friday or anything?
Oh yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my. Yep. Weird customer interactions that you can think of. If not, that's totally okay. I can go and ask you my next question.
I'm sure there was.
I just like to always pay homage to the retail workers when I can. make sure we know how we're treating people in those professions.
Totally, yeah.
It's important.
Oh my gosh. I used to work at, like, my first job ever out of school was Target. Like, I worked as a Target employee.
And rich, yeah.
It was one of those jobs where, like, it was such a mind-opening experience to like, because I used to always shop at Target. And I was like, this is great. And then, like, being the person walking around that people are bumping into with a cart and being like, no, like yelling at, just like, it was wild. And then especially, like, not that this happened a lot, but I was working at the Target that, like, everyone I went to school with, well, I was homeschooled, but, like, I went to, like, a 2-day-a-week, like, umbrella thing. But, like, working at the Target where, like, people would be that I'd see from, like, school or classes or plays or whatever it was that I was doing. And, like, like interacting with their moms and their moms not realizing that I knew their kids and then them being rude or something like that. And I was like, yo, this is crazy. Yeah. It was nuts. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't, like, I think I've told all these stories before, but I've seen so many weird interactions with people at Target, at retail, it blows my mind.
Yeah.
And that's why I always try to, like, bring it up when I can, because, God, the way we treat human beings in public is just so sad. Like, it's actually insane.
Some of the stuff that pops up online too, I'm like, how did someone do this to someone else? Like, this is crazy.
It's actually insane.
Yeah.
But I meant to ask you this earlier and just ADHD'd away completely. You went to school for industrial design.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What exactly did that schooling look like? Like, that was a whole degree.
Mm-hmm.
What went into it? What were some really important classes? Like, what did that process look like?
So it was interesting. It's sort of a mix between engineering and graphic design. So I took mostly graphic design classes or design classes in general. But then obviously, like, we had the basic stuff in the beginning, like the English 101, the Math 101.
Yeah, the gen eds.
Exactly. Which is interesting because I didn't realize, but, like, so the gen ed professors are just people who I think are coming from either different disciplines or maybe it's interesting seeing the difference in teaching style between, like, a professor who's teaching one thing specifically and someone else who isn't as much. And so I don't know, it was a weird, it was the first year, what I'm trying to say is the first year felt like school. The second year, going into design, felt like this whole nother, like, it was just like, it felt like what I thought college was supposed to feel like, but at the same time, it didn't feel enough like school to where I was like, I feel like I'm getting away with not doing work. Like, I feel like I'm just drawing all day. Yeah. Like, and I love English. I love that sort of stuff. But, like, drawing and, like, the other stuff, it just felt like so, it was wild. It was just a completely different experience. And it's sad because in the actual, like, design world, sometimes you lose that because you've got deadlines and you've got all this stuff and it's not like you're doing it to make a company money, which is fine. Like, that's what the whole point is. But at the same time, like, design, it's like you get to explore, you get to try. Like, if you were to design a lamp in the style of Leonardo da Vinci or something like that, like, how would you do it? And it's things like that I really, really enjoyed. But basically, it was like you had the gen eds initially, and then you had drawing, and then you had, like, sculpture, and then you had all this other stuff. And then this is where the problem was. I'm terrible at math.
Oh, I'm also so bad at math. I'm not a math person.
I failed out of physics in high school, which you might say, oh, you're homeschooled. I failed out of physics in high school, and I took it again. And then in college, I failed out of Math 101. And then I failed out of physics in college again. So I took them all again. So instead of getting a minor, I just had to redo math.
Oh, no.
Because I just couldn't, like, I just was so, I don't know if it was my focus or what it was. I just didn't, like, I don't know if I didn't care. I don't know what it was. But I just couldn't, it wouldn't, like, penetrate. And I'm sure that you have, like, methods for making it penetrate that these professors just didn't have. But, like, I just couldn't get it. And then
sometimes the classes aren't necessarily for everybody. Right. It happens.
Right. Well, yeah. So it just, yes. I'm sad to say that I failed out of 2 classes in college, and they're both math.
No, I wouldn't even say I'm sad to say, because I think that's so inspiring to other, like, even kids that are watching this who might not be good at a class or 2 to know that, like, that's okay. And if you fail, you can still have a successful business. You can still have a successful career or a job. Right. So, like, not only do I think it's important for you to acknowledge, like, that happened and you're still doing great, I think that's so great for other people to hear.
That makes sense. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay.
Just like I told you about, like, it's fine for everything to not be perfect.
Right.
That's why I don't care when my wires are out. I don't care when I look a mess. Because, like, it makes finding success seem that much less intimidating, that, like, not everything has to be perfect, and that's okay. And I love that. I think that's beautiful.
That's another reason why I like whenever I tell my story, like, that I got fired, because at the time it was so like personal. It felt like such a like a But then it's the only reason I'm at where I'm at, because I wouldn't have like ventured out and tried it, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Can you think of any other last minute either misconceptions or tips and tricks when it comes to buying shoes, products, socks, whatever, or any last minute things that you want anyone to know about your job or what you do or owning a business, any of the things?
I would say, just if you're interested in doing something like this, just do it. Just try it. Yeah, seriously. It's just a matter of like just getting out and doing it, because you learn so much. And even if the first couple times it just doesn't work out, you're going to be even better the next time. And that was one of those things I would always hear, and I'm like, there's no way that's true. And then I just tried it and I'm like, oh shoot, okay. Like, this is crazy.
When it comes to a lot of like owning your business or creating a product or getting on social media, most people don't find success because they don't try it.
Exactly.
I think people, like, is there a lot of work involved? Yes. Is there luck involved? Yes. But I think it's much more attainable and much more accessible than so many people realize. Right. The biggest op you have is yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like, people think that like it's crazy too. Like, I always used to think, I was worried about what other people thought. And what I've realized is that while sure, some people might be haters, most people, like, they're either cheering for you or they're just not thinking about you at all. Yeah. And so it's like, you could just explore and try and just experiment with things. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Like, probably 5 people saw it. And even if they did, they're not going to think about it in a week.
Exactly. They're not going to remember. You're going to remember way longer than they will. So like, don't waste your breath on it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, Seth.
Appreciate it. Yeah, definitely.
You guys learned so much. I love episodes where I can learn things.
That's awesome.
It makes me so happy. And thank you so much for my socks.
So yeah, if you ever need more socks, let me know.
Don't say, I will run you out of business. I literally, tell everyone again what your company is called.
Apothecary. So it's literally the word apothecary, but we took out, where's the bag? Here it is. We took out some of the vowels because as designers, we thought the word looked cooler without.
No, I think it looks, I love it. I love it so much.
I appreciate it. It was easier to trademark too, which is, we didn't think about it at the time, but it was easier to trademark because apothecary is tough to trademark.
These are going to be my favorite.
I'm so glad. That's awesome.
They're so me. They're like, one set is teal and one set is pink, and they've got like the little rainbow specks in them. Mm-hmm. I'm actually about to put them on now. Awesome. I'm so excited. Thank you.
So glad. Yeah, no problem.
I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and see you next week. Bye, my lovelies.